It's time for my Game Week 5 team reveal, but firstly a massive congratulations to Hoyland Oates for currently leading the way in the not-so-template Super League with an enormous 300 points. If you fancy getting yourself a shout out in the next video by topping the leaderboard, why not come along and join the mini league? The code to do so is on the screen. So it was a fairly disappointing game week for me, finishing on 70 points. Which meant that my overall rank pretty much halved from 329k to 676k. Not ideal, but I'm in a much stronger position than I was this time last season. But now onto my team selection, and first up in goal I've opted for Onana over Areola. This is a genuine coin toss of a decision for me. Onana faces free scoring Brighton at home, while Areola is against a Manchester City side who very few are able to keep a clean sheet against. I have a feeling that Man United are going to slow down the game against Brighton, a little bit like when they played them in the FA Cup last season and the game ended in a 0-0 draw, so that should better suit Onana. Also, with their high defensive line, Brighton are vulnerable to balls over the top, so I'm sure that a player like Onana will be looking to exploit that at every given opportunity. Due to a really tight budget, I've had to go early on using my 2 free transfers this week. Firstly, I've replaced Pinnock with Destiny Udogie, which means that Estepinian drops to the bench. With 2 clean sheets and 2 attacking returns in his first 4 matches, Udogie looks to be emerging as one of the best budget to mid-price defenders in the game. I dodged Spurs assets to begin with this year in FPL, mainly due to the fact I had no idea how they'd line up and also how they'd perform, but so far they've really impressed me, particularly in attack. This week's home fixture against Sheffield United is one that I'm really keen on targeting, so I'm backing Udogie despite him facing Arsenal and Liverpool in the following weeks. Although Arsenal have started the season well, picking up 10 points from a possible 12, it's been disappointing to see Saliba only register 1 clean sheet across those games. From what I've seen so far, the Gunners haven't controlled matches nearly as much as they were doing this time last season, and it's allowing their opposition the chance to score cheap goals. History would suggest that Everton have a good chance of getting something against Arsenal at Goodison Park, but I just think there's too much talent in the Arsenal side and too little quality in the Everton team to cause an upset. Saliba makes the team this week, but he's definitely someone I'm considering transferring out over the coming month. After that electric start to the season against Liverpool, Ben Chilwell hasn't returned nearly as many points as FPL managers were probably hoping for. However, I still think it's too early to lose faith in the Chelsea wingback. He's still got decent upcoming fixtures and he's playing ridiculously advanced down the left side of the pitch, so it's only a matter of time before another attacking return comes his way. Bournemouth away will be a tough test for Chelsea, and I expect the Cherries will most likely score. However, with that being said, they have left themselves open at times this season, and I'd start Chilwell this week more due to his attacking potential than the chance of a clean sheet. After scoring 12 FPL points, it was disappointing to see Bruno Fernandes blank against Arsenal, and to be honest, he never really looked like returning in that game. I'm not really sure where I'm sat when it comes to Man United attackers. On the one hand, they look like they're struggling to create and convert chances, but on the other hand, reinforcements in the form of Hoyland and Amrabat should really solidify the team and help them to control matches. United do have a tough test this week at home to Brighton, but while the Seagulls have been prolific in attack, they have left spaces in behind the defence, and I'd be very surprised if they were to keep a clean sheet in this one. One player who of course will benefit from the space being given to him is Marcus Rashford, and since Ten Hag moved him out onto the left wing, we've seen him become far more impactful, returning a goal and 2 assists in 2 games. Whilst Rashford and Bruno have been underwhelming assets to own so far this season, they do enter a tasty fixture run, facing the likes of Brighton, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Brentford and Sheffield United, so it might be worth holding on to at least one United attacker over the next few weeks. If I were to have to pick between the two, I'd say that Rashford is probably a marginally better long-term hold, but let's see how the new signings affect the team. Bukayo Saka picked up an assist late on in the game against United last Sunday. He also had a big chance which he failed to convert, but other than that, he wasn't overly involved in goalmouth action. Arsenal have a mixed set of fixtures across the coming month. They take on the likes of Everton, Bournemouth and Sheffield United, but also face Tottenham, Man City and Chelsea in between, so I'm not overly interested in their assets. I think Saka is probably worth holding on to though. He's nailed to start and of course has penalties. I personally think it's a big risk to go without any of the Gunners' attacking players, as on their day they're capable of putting 3 or 4 past their opposition. After a strong week returning 12 FPL points, I was disappointed that Moussa Diaby wasn't able to have more of an impact in the match against Liverpool. From the first whistle, Villa were well and truly dominated in that game, with Liverpool completely controlling the midfield, and that caused Diaby to have very little to feed off of throughout the entire match. Having said that, I still think he offers great value for money at 6.6 million, and I'm happy to hold on to him for a little bit longer. So far, Villa have struggled against the bigger teams in Newcastle and Liverpool, but they've come out on top against Everton and Burnley, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them put in an impressive performance at home to Palace. Yes, I've gone all in on Tottenham this week by using my second free transfer to bring in Maddison for Bowen and captain him for this home game against Sheffield United. If I'm being completely honest, I genuinely think I'll free fall down the ranks if I continue to go without Spurs assets. They're looking good under Postecoglou, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a player like Maddison pick up a double-digit haul every few game weeks. We all knew that Maddison was a quality player when he was at Leicester, but I personally underestimated what he would be able to do when surrounded by better players. Although Spurs have an upcoming match against Arsenal, I do think it's a sensible move to target their players for this game week in particular. Haaland gets the vice-captaincy for me, which might be a bit of a risk seeing as he returned a hat-trick, an assist and 20 FPL points in the match against Fulham. Many fantasy managers decided to triple captain the Norwegian last week, and in hindsight it looked like it was one of the best single game weeks to use the chip, as Man City were at home versus the team with the highest expected goals against. This week City faced surely a much tougher test away at West Ham, who are a team that have started the season well, with 10 points from a possible 12, and the Hammers are usually a difficult team to beat at home. Haaland scored a brace at the London Stadium last season, but I'm hoping that Maddison outscores him this week. Ollie Watkins disappointed in the game against Liverpool. However, I can't really justify moving him on ahead of a home match against Palace. Owning double Villa attack has been a mixed ride so far this campaign. It's returned me steady FPL points, but also sprinkled in there have been some really poor performances. My original plan after this game week was to transfer out Watkins for somebody like Isak, as Villa come up against Chelsea and Brighton, while Newcastle enter a fantastic fixture run. I thought Watkins would be a decent option to go for at the start of the season, but he's no longer playing 90 minutes per game and he's lost penalties, so I think his appeal has been greatly diminished. Which means that making the bench for game week 5 I've got Areola, Bayer, Estupinian and Woodrow. As I mentioned earlier, I've had to go early with my 2 free transfers this week, as Pinnock and Bowen to Udogie and Maddison left me with 0.0 million in the bank, so I had to make the move to avoid the price changes. My current thoughts are to navigate the next few weeks with free transfers and then potentially activate the wild card at around game week 9 or 10, when I can target players from the likes of Liverpool, Brighton and perhaps even West Ham, whilst holding on to Spurs, Man United and Aston Villa assets. So that's my confirmed team for game week 5. I just have to cross my fingers and hope for no injuries over the international break. Thanks as always for watching guys, I hope you have a pleasant weekend off and best of luck for the upcoming game week.